Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mian Molson Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mian Molson Zia, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mian Molson Zia has garnered great reviews and even loved and endorsed by Hollywood celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today before it goes missing by Mian Molson Zia, available on Amazon. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, and Apple. Coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and TuneIn. Heard worldwide on Geo 7, Radio Public, Himalaya, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. Don't forget to support the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Also on Anchor FM/support and PayPal for great gift ideas, including T-shirts, pillows, and pop sockets, and a lot more. Go to Amazon.com/The Mike Wagner Show, and don't sleep on it before it goes by. And also for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Me and Molson Zia and check out these great books before it goes missing. And once you check it out, Amazon.com, check it out today. We're here with a terrific gentleman who has a book out called Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC, and he also did a book called Be a Stand-Up Comic. He's an owner of CEO of 40 years. He went from small construction company to us running a sub and a beach shack. I'm hungry already. I just got done talking to a chef with more than subs. And of course, a number of comedy clubs. And I mean, this guy would just make you laugh, basically. He's worked with Dana Carvey, Paula Poundstone, Yakov Smirnoff. What a country. And yes, it is a great country indeed. And what makes a professional comedian, he'll tell you more about it. And he'll give you a lot of great tips, do's and don'ts and how to make it in the business. And, basically, he's kind of a comedian himself. And I gotta say this, once I connect with him, it's like, I feel like I'm in for a good laugh. Live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in the Comedy Central, the very, very multi-talented author of Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC, Be a Stand-Up Comic, a lot more, Robert Scott Edwards, or best known as Scott. Scott, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Wow, Mike, I got to tell you, you have the fastest mouth in the business. You really get that information. Wait, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it from Mike.
Hey!
All right, that's enough. Okay, good. Wow, that's incredible. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's so great to be with you today. Mike is absolutely correct. I got a book out there, Be a Stand-Up Comic, or Just Look Like One. And then the podcast, Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC. And we've got some great information to share. Mike, what do you want to start with?
Well, basically, let's just tell us about how you got started. You've been owner and CEO of 40 years, not just comedy, but also in other businesses, small construction, a sub and a beach shack. And oh my gosh, comedy clubs and, just overall comedy. And just tell us how you got started. It's amazing. And I'm hungry for a sub along a beach shack.
It's so funny that you mentioned a sub like the sandwich, because I know one of your early sponsors was Firehouse Subs. But I was actually owned an actual submarine. We took people out in the ocean, and the beach shack was a separate industry. So we're jumping ahead a little bit. I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. I did start a small construction company when I was 17, but by the time I was 24, I opened up Laughs Unlimited, which turned into a chain of comedy clubs, restaurants, and art galleries.
Wow.
And that was in 1980, so before you were born, Mike. And we had a chance to work with some of the best in the business. In fact, my very first show had Gary Shandling as the opening act.
Oh my God, I love Gary Shandling. He was fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. It was his very first road gig out of his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona. And the headliner was George Wallace, who's famous for his many years leading hit comedy shows in Vegas, Nevada. And Gary Shandling, there was a comic magician, Peter DePaula, and George Wallace. And the quick story was I was actually selling life insurance. I bounced around a bit.
Really?
And I was down in LA on vacation, and my dad, who had a great sense of humor, says, "Hey, you go by and check out this place, the Comedy Store." And they had a little satellite room just off of UCLA in Westwood. And I go in, and on stage was Sandra Bernhardt, Dave Coulier, and a bunch of others. And I go, man, Sacramento, my hometown, needs something like this. I talked to Dave Coulier after the show. We connected, been lifelong friends. He was at my bachelor party. And I came back up to Sacramento, got out of in selling insurance, and opened up Laughs Unlimited, as I mentioned, in August of 1980. So that was kind of the beginning of my comedy career. I was able to run those comedy clubs until 2001 when I sold and kind of semi-retired, but had a great opportunity to work with people like you mentioned. You did a great impression of Yakov Smirnoff.
Now I'm waiting for some vodka after kind of wrecking my throat here a little bit. So it's like vodka. Well,
exactly.
This will be a substitute in the meantime.
There you go. Yakov Smirnoff actually worked for me in 1980 when he had just come out of Russia. He was actually a comic on cruise ships in the Black Sea. Wow. When he lived in Russia. He came over to the U.S. and actually learned to speak English by watching TV and started working for me as a opening act and developed into a terrific headliner. And we just had a great interview with him on my podcast a couple weeks ago, and he's doing really well. You may have heard he had his own theater, still does, in Branson, Missouri for the last 15 years.
I heard something about that in semi-retirement, and a lot of them go there, like Tony Orlando and Dawn. And if I'm correct, I think Dolly Parton, one of the country stars, opened up a branch in Branson, Missouri. And, there's quite a number of entertainers that just want to set their own house, get a house in Branson and pretty much entertain, don't have to be on the road. And I did hear something about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, I have to go down to Branson, Missouri and see this guy. And, considering being up north as well, too, being in the center, it's like, there's no excuse not to go see him or Branson, Missouri.
Yeah, we got to get you out of North Dakota, Mike, especially in the winter. But it's true. A lot of entertainers that I've worked with and you've heard of out of Las Vegas, where they may have done shows, will semi-retire in Branson, Missouri, set up their own theater. And you mentioned several. And Yakov was very successful doing that. I got to stump you. One of the major movie stars of our day was actually a performer at my club in September of 1980. You won't guess, so I'm going to tell you right off the bat. You and your audience will be a little shocked. Tom Hanks worked for me.
Tom Hanks, really? Wow.
Yeah, he was a graduate of Sacramento State University here in Sacramento. He was home visiting family during, you remember his very first TV show? It was Bosom Buddies.
Bosom Buddies, yes, I remember that. And it was just like, he was a little known. I think he was in House Party, and he was in those frat parties. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe he'll be good for a little bit. And then all of a sudden, he hit the big time and everything else, and the rest is history. And it's like Tom Hanks. It's like, who knew? That's all.
Right. And people he's had some success, I'd say. But when he was doing Bosom Buddies on one of the shows, they wanted him to do some stand-up comedy, and he was good friends with one of my regulars, Bob Saget, and he came in as the opening act for Bob Saget and worked for a full week and just kind of learning what it was like to be a stand-up. So he would be prepared for this Bosom Buddies episode. It was pretty interesting, and something I'm sure he's long forgotten.
No, he'll be like, bosom what?
Yeah, right.
Oh my
In his
God,
illustrious career, that was a pretty quiet start. But we've been very lucky. We had a chance. I got my sense of humor from my father, and so I would bring in acts really just to because I love the art form of comedy. And I had a chance to bring in Soupy Sales.
Oh, my favorite. Yeah, Soupy Sales. I remember seeing him at Disneyland. Was it Disneyland or Disney World in California? You know, of all places. And it's like the guy was just amazing, pie in the face and everything. He was still funny after all these years.
Well, I don't want to
Still
make
got a
you
pie
feel
in the face
jealous.
from him.
Well, I'm going to make you jealous, Mike. We did a special promo at a car dealership with Soupy Sales. We had TV and radio come out, and we did a spot. And in that, I got a pie in the face by Soupy Sales.
Oh my gosh.
And he hit everybody, presidents, Frank Sinatra, and Scott Edwards. Who knew?
And I bet you it tasted like coconut or whipped cream, right?
Oh, it was whipped cream. Yeah, nothing fancy, but just to have Soupy Sales do that. But my point of bringing that up is that, of course, we had a lot of new comics and people before they became famous. We name dropped a few. Dana Carvey got a start at my club. Coulier, Seinfeld worked for me a lot.
Oh, yes.
Robin Williams came through, but some of the classics. Soupy Sales, another one that I became very good friends with, Pat Paulson.
Pat Paulson, I remember him. He was like the political candidate or something, running for whatever office or something.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that. He used to always run for president, and he was part of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, and a regular. And as a promo, they had him fake run for president, but he actually got a few votes, and it stuck. And he was a regular at my club. And so we were having the gubernatorial race in Sacramento. And we did this great press party where we set up a podium and we had security that looked like Secret Service. And we had a limousine bring Pat Paulson in. And he went up to the podium and we got 300 or 400 people. And we had placards made, said, "Why not Paulson?" And he gave a whole speech just like he was running for president. We had to nudge him and tell him, no, we're looking for a governor. Oh, okay.
Kind of like Reagan back in the day. Oh,
yeah,
now I remember. Here, give me some jelly beans, will you, Nancy? Yeah,
oh,
I remember.
yeah. It was just a pleasure working with him and doing fun things like that.
Mm-hmm. And I bet you he probably got more votes than Homer Simpson. It's like, Homer Simpson's always running for president. It's like, what are you going to do as president? Push the right button. Don't.
Exactly. And as the perennial presidential candidate, Pat Paulson always entertained the audiences. And one of those guys, a lot of these guys were big famous stars in the past, were so down to earth and easy to work with. It was really a pleasure.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny too, you mentioned about the comedians who worked back in the days, like in the 80s and everything else. And also another thing that came up, it's like, how are the 80s comedians compared to today, like 80s humor versus now?
Well, it's interesting you ask because there has been a shift. I was really lucky in 1980 when I first opened Laughs Unlimited. I caught the very beginning of the big comedy wave. And for those that don't remember, comedy used to be entertainment at strip clubs or jazz clubs between bands. Mm-hmm. There was no real place to go see it except maybe the Catskills out of New York. But in about 1978, 1979, the Comedy Store and the Improv and a couple other clubs kind of got their start. When I opened Laughs Unlimited, it was the 12th club in the country that was all comedy. And we caught that wave, and comedy was the hottest thing. I mean, it was funny because when I opened, I was the 12th club. And by about 1985, comedy clubs were like Starbucks. They were on every corner, right? It's diminished some, but it really got hot in the 80s and early 90s. And then it kind of faded away in the 90s as things changed. And the people I worked with, a lot of them you've all heard of. We've already mentioned Saget, Coulier, Shandling, Seinfeld. Jay Leno was a regular at my room.
Oh, I love Jay Leno. He came to Harper College a lot, and I think he came in Palatine, Illinois, maybe like 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a year. And he'll ride up in his Harley too, just to park in a regular parking spot and do his thing. He was amazing.
Oh, he still is one of those guys that loves to do stand-up. Him and Jerry still perform regularly, but back in the day before they were rich and famous, they worked for me. And it was great to work with those guys, and they had the kind of clean material that could really do well on TV and take you someplace.
Mm,
In around 2000, 2005, comedy shifted to a little edgier, little dirtier, and you couldn't do the Tonight Show and there was no Merv Griffin show to go on. There was no way to really boost your career because they weren't working clean.
mm,
And I think that took some of the edge off of stand-up comedy through the 2000s. It became more of a, well, there'll be an HBO special or there'll be something you could get. Now the internet's given it a bit of a rebirth, because on the internet you can find clean comedy like Seinfeld or Carvey or Leno, or you can find the more edgier stuff. I was always made a point of trying to bring in clean entertainment, the guys that were going to end up having huge careers, because I felt that fit my Sacramento audience. I mean, where
mm.
you're at does make a difference.
Right, exactly. Bismarck, North Dakota, I'd say it's a lot smaller than Sacramento, but it's got the same values, same lifestyle and everything else. So it's like you and I are pretty much from the same blood as well, too. Although I grew up in the Midwest, Milwaukee, Chicago, and a couple of years in Carbon, Illinois, and coming to Bismarck, it's almost like the same mold in a way, too. It's like, Sacramento, Bismarck, and conservative, family, clean, but also you can still find some good entertainment.
Right. And it's interesting because you come from that same central states like Johnny Carson, where you were everybody's man. Everybody could relate to you. Everybody enjoyed hearing your comedy. And it's interesting because I worked with acts from all over the country, but there was definitely a different edge, let's say, to a New York comic or a San Francisco comic back in the 80s. Was just past the kind of hippie stage. And
Right.
so you were getting that from there. And then in LA, there was a real mix. Most of them were trying to stay clean because that's when Macaulay or somebody would see him and put him on the Tonight Show. But there was others that it was a kind of an underground comedy scene and it could be real edgy. But in Sacramento, we did try to keep it pretty up and clean because that's what our audience liked.
And of course, I was thinking about the underground scene. I also thought like with Andrew Dice Clay and then
Right.
some of the
Good example.
what was it like? And I'm trying to think. There was a female comic that had that similar style of Clay. So it's like, and it's like there's some names. It's like, it escapes me at this point.
Well, there was a whole crux of them. There were some that were able to kind of ride that line. Like one of the acts I used a lot was Bobcat Goldthwait. And
Bobcat Goldthwait, yes.
he could come
Remember
across
Tonight
pretty
Show,
edgy, but he also, had an entertaining set that average Americans would enjoy. Another one that's not edgy, but really different. Emo Phillips used to
Emo
work for me a
Phillips.
lot.
I remember Emo Phillips. I saw him before too. He had like that bowl cut or something from
Right.
England back in the day. He was like one of those bards or whatever it was. He was different, but funny as heck. I love
Right. And not
Phillips.
particularly dirty, but he was different. You said it really well. He came at comedy from a different angle. Another guy that's still out touring today, Arj Barker, is a newer little bit, he can be a little edgy, he can be a little midstream, but not everybody can follow that path and make it work. It can be tough.
And also too, another one I was going to mention too is Carrot Top. It's like he was known for his act and got the big orange thing. You see him in commercials and whatever. All right, yeah, we're just breaking into two parts here, as you could tell that yeah. Steve Martin just walking by and everything. So yeah, it's with Carrot Top, and he probably came in and did a little prank on me just now, and he probably made you do a prank. And I was in Chicago. It was called what was it, Zanies or something, and it was
Right.
that
The Famous
Funny
Club.
Bone. And they had, and it's Sunday night comedy. It's like you had up and coming comics, and you pay maybe $1 or $2 to get in, and whatever else. And then it was just like, I was like your typical heckler. It's like you say this, say that, and he looked at me and goes, he looked at me and goes, I can see you come up on stage. And went, oh crap! It's like I was crapping in my pants. Go, what's your name? Mike. what's your last name? Mike, what's you? Fucking forgot your last name. And so he had me go up on stage. He goes, here, you want this dollar bill? I want you to jump up and down and try to touch the mic. I'm like, okay. So I did that a few times. He goes, actually, you can win $5. So I did that, touched the mic. Everybody loved it and wrote on the dollar bill, $5. It was too funny. And here I was being like a Mr. Smart Aleck. And I think I got called up on stage. I was so scared, to be honest with you.
Well, but, you know, Carrot Top's one of those really high energy prop acts that you just never know what's going to happen. There was a famous magician. I just did an interview for the podcast, Amazing Jonathan.
Wow.
Remember him? Really crazy comic magician, had his own theater in Vegas for 12 years, and really high energy, a lot of props. And he would always bring people up on stage, and he was a genius at making them look foolish, but getting some really good comedy. I mean, he was always very appreciative and never mean, but you have to have a talent for bringing people up on stage because they're sharing your space with you. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of people that can do it, but Carrot Top, Amazing Jonathan, Gallagher, there's been a few.
Gallagher, yeah. What was it like? What is known for, like, you know, crushing watermelons or something? It's like,
yes,
hit him on the head, whatever it is. He was known for that. I loved it.
It was crazy. Well, Mike, when I got done with all this, I sat down and I wrote a book about my 40 plus years on the fringe of show business. And when I got done, my wife just mocked me openly and said, "What are you, an idiot? No one's going to read your book." And she said, "You ought to do a podcast." And so Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, I've been doing it for a little over a year, is all about the art of stand-up. And it's a combination of interviews like you do with famous and not so famous comics, but also some great material from the 80s and the 90s and on. And it's all about just entertainment. There's no point, there's no politics. It's just pure entertainment.
Mm-hmm. And amazing entertainment too. We'll talk more about those books and also some things, tips, advice, do's, don'ts, and everything else. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@SonicWebStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Mosensia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Mosensia. Available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Mosensia has garnered great reviews and even endorsed by Hollywood celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today before it goes missing by Mia Mosensia, available on Amazon. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, and Apple. Coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and TuneIn. Heard worldwide on Geo 7, Radio Public, Himalaya, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. Don't forget to subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show. Also support the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com. Also on Anchor FM/support and PayPal. And for great gift ideas, including pop sockets, t-shirts, hoodies, and some throw pillows as well, too. You can
love the pillow
at your favorite particular comedian, or if you don't like him on TV, you can do so. So go to Amazon.com/the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for great gift ideas, including me and Mosenzia's book, Gone Missing, and he's gone missing before, too. But we did find him once. Amazon.com/me and Mosenzia. Make sure you go to Amazon today as well. We're here with author Scott Edwards of the book Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, and also be a stand-up comic. And also he's got a podcast on as well, too. And over 40 years of, being in business, from small construction to a sub and beach shack and number of comedy clubs. And let's talk more about your book, Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, be a stand-up comic, and more. And maybe a little bit about the book, about how to be a comedian, tips and tricks, do's and don'ts.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. And again, congratulations. You do a fine job for your
Thank you.
sponsors.
And you're a great guest as well, too. Standing ovation, everybody. Fireworks.
Woo!
Rounds of fireworks. Fireworks. Come
All right,
on.
that's enough.
Fireworks.
Hey, yeah, so I've had over 40 years producing shows. I do fundraisers these days and other benefit type concerts. But what I've done is I've taken that information and I created the podcast, Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC. And I have this terrific book. It's called Be a Stand-Up Comic or Just Look Like One. But it's basically a guide for anybody interested in the industry. And whatever level you're at, you'll find something in this book. So in the early chapters, we're telling people the reality of what it's like to be a comic, the difficulty. There's not a lot of money in the beginning, difficulty on the road, living in condos and sharing space with other people. And the early professional tips, like always have the microphone at least 3 inches from your mouth, don't shout, be sure to talk slow and enunciate. And dress appropriately. I mean, some of these people want to go up on stage in their pajamas. I don't get it. But you got to remember.
They think it's funny, though. So
Right. They do. They think it's funny. But what's interesting is they forget a lot of people, I won't say comics because I don't agree with that. A lot of people going up on stage think the audience is there for them. And that is just totally incorrect. The audience waited in line, paid a cover charge. They have an expectation to be entertained. You, as the entertainer, are there for the audience. They're not there for you. You got to remember that. And when you go up on stage, it's so important to be professional, look right, act right. Hopefully you've worked up something funny to share. And time is so important. You would know this being from radio. You have to be very aware of the clock. If you're told to do a 3-minute set, it better be a 3-minute set. You can't go 10 minutes because you're throwing off the whole show. So timing is very important. But the book goes on to tell you different aspects on how it's important to write material, building up that material and how to put together a joke, how to put together a set, everything from getting your first 5 minutes down to somebody like Jay Leno that can do an hour, 2 hours of straight monology, of comedy. So all those things are wrapped up in Be a Stand-Up Comic or Just Look Like One. And this information is available through my website or through the book or through the podcast. There's lots of information. But for anybody that wants to be a stand-up comic, it's a great guide.
And of course, too, another thing that kind of brought up as well, too, that you have to do this night after night after night after night. And of course, it can be a grind after a while. But what is important when working with an audience night after night? And why is it important to work it up night after night after night and developing consistency? That's going to be the biggest challenge of all.
That's so interesting you mentioned that, Mike, because to really hone a joke or a bit to its perfect verbiage and where to use inflection in your voice and how to bring the audience in takes repetition, we've all heard it from musicians, practice. But the gift that's unique in stand-up comedy and why a lot of them ending up being actors is that each time you perform an act or a joke or a bit that you may have done 50 or 100 times to get it to where it's at its best little nugget of entertainment, is that when you're sharing it with the audience, you're sharing it like you just thought of it, like it's a special gift to them. And that's where the acting comes in. It's kind of fascinating. The really good comic entertainers are sharing material that they've probably done 100 times, but to the audience, it's like, oh man, I just missed a cab ride. Have you ever been in a cab? You ever had one of these guys?
Cab rides are always good, I'll tell you that. We've got there's always a good cab story.
Right. And that's something else that let's take a little side trip on. To be a really good comic, and we were talking about comedy from the 80s and 90s to today, a lot of comedians, or think they are comedians, want to use the stage as a pulpit to share their opinion of things. When in reality, the guys that made millions of dollars and huge success on TV doing comedy, Seinfeld, Leno, are always the best to announce, Bob Saget, Dave Coulier, there's a bunch, Dana Carvey. They share ideas and funny about stuff that everybody in the audience can relate to. One of my best examples, Mike, is Jerry Seinfeld. Back in the day, one of his early jokes was, what's with men's pajamas? Everyone's seen men's pajamas. They look like little suits. They got collars, they got breast pockets. What's that for? I put a protractor in my pocket and fall asleep. I'm going to kill myself. And the thing was, I'm sure Jerry never once wore those kind of men's pajamas, but he knew that everybody in the audience had seen that either on TV or on their own parents, right? So everybody could relate to it.
Yada, yada, yada.
Exactly.
Yada, yada, yada. Or who was that, Soup Nazi or something? It's like
right.
that he went up on stage and just kind of went off on a rant. I think about that. One of the earlier Seinfeld things I remember, I knew he was going to be a great comedian. I remember Jerry Seinfeld in an American Express commercial in the early days where he was about to get a flight and he goes, you go to Memphis? I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. How am I going to do that?
Well, a lot of people forget because he's been so successful with his own series Seinfeld that before that, when I met him and he was working for me, he was on the TV show as a regular character, Benson. Remember the Benson TV show? Benson,
yes, that's right. I think, was it Benson came from that guy from Soap or something?
Right.
That was it, yeah.
And so Seinfeld had some experience. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but he had some experience and he's able to take his already strong comedy that he developed in New York, which is where he got started, and bring that to the stage as both an actor and a comic. And we all know where it took him.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is amazing. I was just going to say, and Benson, ding dong. You want me to get that?
Yeah, right.
I'll never forget that.
Well, it was, I was really blessed. One of the big concerts I did, Jerry Seinfeld was actually the opening act and the closer was Jay Leno. And I mean, talk about a great show. The audience, we used the Sacramento Convention Center Theater. There was a little over 2,000 people. Obviously, it was a sold out show, a huge success. But I got to tell you, we were able to work with the best. Someone that got started at the club, Mike, was that you may remember from start off in Boston. Her name's Paula Poundstone.
Paula Poundstone, yes, another one of my favorites. Very classic, Paula Poundstone. Oh my God.
She's a unique entertainer. She brings comedy from a whole nother position. But when she first came out from Boston, Laughs Unlimited was one of the first clubs she worked at. She's the only act in my 40-year history running clubs that I allowed to work multiple weeks in a row because she was an opening act. She had just come out from Boston. She was trying to find her footing on stage, and she worked with Gary Shandling at my club, Bob Saget, and these guys helped mold her and help her find her character and find her funny on stage. And of course, we all know she went on to be not only a very successful headliner for me at Laughs Unlimited, but a big TV star, and now has her own podcast. She's doing really well, but it all started by just going up on stage and being herself. And people got to remember, do what's fun for you.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I was just thinking about the whole thing. We had our, generation of comedians growing up. Some people enjoy the comedy of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Some people enjoyed the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges. And of course, I enjoyed, Mel Brooks, Monty Python, and everything else. And who were some of your favorites growing up?
You named a lot of them. You and I think I'm a bit older than you, but we grew up in a different kind of comedy. There was more slapstick. It was more in your face. Lewis and Martin and Lewis, it was
yes,
really obvious material. When I actually got into the business, it gotten, I wouldn't say more cerebral, but it was more monology. There was more story. A famous comic, Larry Miller, was one of my personal favorites, could set up and tell a joke for 20 minutes and you'd be laughing all the way through it. And then you'd have somebody like Stephen Wright, who's just a series of one-liners. So what you were alluding to is everybody has a different sense of humor. And what was interesting for me over those decades of being in the business was interacting with the comics while finding what worked with the audience. And but you mentioned a few of the people that I go back to, Groucho Marx and some of these others. There's some amazing people that have come up through the years. One of the people that broke the ceiling for women, Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers, yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, she was just what was that, darling? What do you think you're doing, darling? Yeah. I got these breast implants, it makes it so short.
Well, she was definitely special. And my little claim to fame with Joan Rivers is I was sitting next to her at the Comedy Store, and I guess I was being a little too loud. She actually leaned around the booth and looked right at me and went, shh.
Church lady.
So I got shushed by Joan Rivers.
Maybe she
So I
took
claimed
a
to fame.
library or something, or in a convent.
Yeah, not in the middle of a comedy club. It was kind of funny, but it's been an interesting life.
Oh my goodness. I could think of another comedian as well too along the female lines. Another trailblazer, Carol Burnett. I mean, she was just terrific in her own right as well too.
Well, what's interesting, both Joan Rivers actually was a famous stand-up comic before she got fame and fortune, but people like Lucille Ball and
yes,
they didn't really have the opportunity. There weren't comedy clubs, and they were doing what other people were doing. We're working the Hungry Tiger in San Francisco or something, where they're catching a few minutes between jazz bands, or even working the strip clubs, or maybe some thing out in the mountains of the Catskills. So they kind of missed out on being stand-up comics, but they were certainly so funny and able to act and bring that humor to the stage. But you mentioned Monty Python. I mean, those guys were genius. It was a drier sense of humor because it comes from England. Again, here, funny should be funny, but it's true that something in England, seeing a man in a dress just cracks those people up.
or it's just like, Crunchy Frog, or you like say the naughty benefit and, or they make like a joke about an eyeball, an eyelash, or something coming out of your nose, whatever it is. Like they'll take one little thing and make a big comedy out of it. It's like, boy, how do they do that?
It's just incredible. Monty Python was one of my favorite groups to watch comedically, and I will express my gratitude that I did get a chance to book Graham Chapman in my club. Yes. And Graham came in. He didn't really do stand-up comedy, but he told stories that were just so funny, and he hung out with the Beatles and the Stones, and all some of the stories about touring with Monty Python and doing the Holy Grail. And just getting to meet Graham Chapman was just such an honor. And what was neat about being on the fringe of show business, when I say that, Mike, when you own a comedy club in Sacramento, California, you are not a hub. Everybody's going to New York or LA, but being on the fringe of show business, I was able to work with some of the best, and it was quite an honor.
You mentioned about the Holy Grail as well too. One of my favorites, and I still get a line from those things, coconuts you're clopping. It's just like, you think you're a horse or stuff like that. Bring out your dead. It's like, they make fun of all the issues, but then it's like they also make fun of themselves, and that's the best part. It's like they make fun of others, but then it's okay to make fun of themselves, and that's what I liked about it.
Well, that's one of the secrets of comedy, is that not only being relatable and being able to make fun of everyday things or even groups, but being able to self-deprecate and include yourself in that brings the audience in. That's really the key, is you want to relate to the audience. And like in the book, Be a Stand-Up Comic or Just Look Like One, there are explanations of how to do that, how to control the stage, use a sound system, use your control to bring something to that audience. It's really a challenging way to go, but if you can do it, there's could be great success.
And very great success indeed as well too. And we'll talk more about what's coming up for Scott Edwards in 2021 and more. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Also brought to you by our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international war ring author Mia Mohsen-Zia of Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We'll be back with Scott Edwards, the CEO of 40 Years of All Comedy Clubs and the author of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, and be a stand-up comic and podcast host after this timeout. We're back with Scott Edwards of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC here on the Mike Wagner Show. Amazing amount of material you gave. I mean, you could pretty much do a stand-up yourself. I mean, it's just, oh my gosh. It's like, you tell stories. It's like, I'm already laughing like crazy. You're amazing.
Well, it's been a fun life, and it's great to share it. And it was funny. It was pointed out by somebody I was interviewing the other day for the podcast that I actually ended up with more stage time than most entertainers, because as the MC, so my podcast, Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, is titled that because for over 20 years, every night I was introduced on stage, ladies and gentlemen, your host and MC, Scott Edwards. And so it's perfect for the podcast because what I'm bringing is interviews and stand-up comedy as an entertainment, just like I used to do at the club. But all those years on stage were really a gift. And the people I got a chance to work with, which we've name dropped several, really made a difference in my life. And I'm just glad I can share it now through this podcast and then through the book.
And of course, another one I got to think of as well too is George Carlin. He kind of broke through, but he also made it mainstream as well too. I remember listening to him, and all of a sudden, it's like after his infamous seven words you can't say on TV.
Yeah,
now it's
seven
like,
words you can't say on TV.
That's right. And of course, I actually got influenced by when we first moved to suburban Chicago, 9 years old. And, a couple of guys, stoners. And the first thing I brought in was George Carlin records and Cheech and Chong. We just like put them on a big hi-fi. And that's all we listen to is George Carlin and Cheech and Chong.
Oh, Mike, I'm going to make you envious one more time. One of the things I got to do, again, huge fan of Cheech and Chong. Twice I was able to book Tommy Chong at the club.
Oh my gosh.
And we got to do a couple of their old bits on stage together. And he did his he brought out his electric guitar and did Earache My Ass. Remember that great song?
Or was it Earache My Eye or something like that?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Earache My Eye. I'm so
Earache
sorry. I didn't mean to get that wrong.
Oh, my go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but to hear that on my stage after listening to that record, Big Bamboo, I think it was, over and over, and having Tommy Chong right there. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more exciting.
I still remember the bit about with Cheech and Chong. I think it was Sister Mary Elephant. That's one of my favorites. Good morning, class. Good morning, class. Class, shut up.
Well, it was funny because he would recreate some of those bits on stage, and it was always a little embarrassing because one of the famous bits that Cheech and Chong did together was they would play dogs and smell each other's butts, right? Yeah. So on the live stage, he would bring up a woman from the audience and just go to town on her butt. It was so funny and yet so embarrassing to watch as the club owner, as one of my audience members is getting goosed by the nose of Tommy Chong. It was so crazy.
I need another free drink ticket, please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We always had to do something. We didn't want to get sued, but it was hilarious stuff.
Oh, man. You know what? Back in the early days, it's like, of course, you had the teenagers that have these, but then someone else will bring a little thing of Jack Daniels, and they say the more you drink, the more funnier the comedian gets. And that's true. Oh my gosh.
Well, I certainly come from the age of, in fact, it was difficult for me as a club owner to avoid. I'm not into drugs and never did that stuff, but I was around it. There was a very famous road comic, John Fox, who did a fair amount of drugs. And there was one time he chased me around the green room with a spoonful of Coke. Come on, it won't kill you. Come on, you can do it. I mean, drugs were pretty prevalent back in the 80s, but we didn't allow them on stage, or supposedly not in the club. It happened. But it was something that people felt. Marijuana was, of course, big, and people felt like if they could smoke a joint before they saw a comedy show, it loosened them up. And I think there was some truth to that.
And I remember it was prevalent on Second City TV, and it was it was at that Saturday Night Live that got really amped up. I remember, watching Saturday Night Live with a bunch of friends. If we were so wired, we ended up watching Second City TV, and was it I am so and so, and I'm Earl Cannon-Bear, and so like they purposely just smoke it on the set. It's like Canadians didn't care. It's like what you did. It's like it was always funny. I mean, John Candy just made it happen. Martin Short and
oh, there were some great Second City people. You're naming some of the best.
Wow. And of course, lastly, I mean, this came to mind. It's like we have to mention Steve Martin. I mean, just still amazing.
Well, he really was one of the people that helped make stand-up comedy. When he came out with his first album where he had the arrow through the head and he had this rubber chicken and stuff, that came out about 1978, 1979. And that was one of the crucibles where things were dumped in, and what came out of it was live stand-up comedy. So everyone's always been thankful to Steve Martin. Another one real quick, I know we're running out of time, but one of the geniuses of comedy, Robin Williams.
Oh, yes. Something? It is like sacrilegious not to mention Robin Williams. It is sacrilegious.
Well, a lot of people don't know he got his start in a little known club called the Holy City Zoo in San Francisco. The room only held 28 people.
Really?
The stage was maybe 4 foot square, really small. They had a balcony that held 3 people. It was incredible. But he and Dana Carvey and a lot of others got their start at this Holy City Zoo. He was so much genius. His mind worked so quick. I was very blessed to have him at my club twice, but I didn't have to pay him. What was great about Robin is he loved comedy so much and entertaining the audience. If he was doing a concert, which in Sacramento, he'd come in and do a big sold-out concert, he would always leave the concert, come straight over to my club and do like an hour of material. It was just
wow,
incredible. The audiences didn't have to pay anything extra. Whoever happened to be there got to see Robin live on stage. And it was just so exciting for me to twice work with him.
That is so amazing. I mean, you're so full of information, Scott. It's just like, I mean, I am just amazed by what you present. I mean, I have to say that's not jealous at all. It's like just absolutely fantastic. I could go on for another couple hours, but let's have you back on again real soon. We're with Scott Edwards, the author of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC on the Mike Wagner Show, along with Be a Stand-Up Comic. And just a couple more things. Who do you consider biggest influence in your career, Scott?
I'd have to say my dad. I get my sense of humor from my father. I was really blessed to have a guy that enjoyed comedy and exposed me to it. He took me to the movie A Mad, 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 Mad World.
Oh, yeah, 1963. And
yeah, I just never forgot it.
Oh, my God. It's like I show it to my sons, and they still crack up. They didn't know. Nobody know who they were, but they're just still funny. It's still a funny movie today.
Funny is funny, right, Mike?
That's right. We should know. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Well, if you're looking to get into comedy, the best advice I can get is don't be afraid. Get on stage at least once or twice and get that sense of adrenaline, that feel of entertaining strangers. But if you need help, what's coming down the road, Mike, is my Be a Stand-Up Comic or Just Look Like One book is being converted into a comedy class, online class that people will be able to sign up for, where you not only get the book and you get some rare videos of vintage entertainers from my archives, but there's actual lessons 1 through 9 that'll get you on stage and funny.
Wow, that is amazing. Where can we find this comedy class? Where can we find the podcast? And where can we find the book set? And where can we find you at, Scott?
Well, all those, the comedy class is still in the works, but everything can be found at my website, www.standupcomedyyourhostandmc.com. And from that website, you can see pictures of some of the famous people we've talked about. There's the podcast with interviews of a lot of these people, our archival videos from back in 1980, 1990 that are just amazing. And if you just want to be entertained, this is going to be a place to go.
We certainly would check that out. Once again, Scott Edwards, the author of Standup Comedy, your host and MC on the Mike Wagner Show. Scott, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely terrific. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on in 2021 and beyond. And don't forget to keep in touch, and let's get you on real soon. You've just been absolutely fantastic. I just laughed my ass off.
Thanks, buddy. It's been great. Wait a minute.
Wait.
Thanks, Mike.